I next want to turn it over to Bobek, and if you could share with us a little bit about what you see the Iranian American community facing specifically, and also what strategies are IABA and coalition partners pursuing.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, so you know, it's a unique time for Iranian Americans in this country. I would say it's a time not seen at least for a generation, and maybe never, frankly. I think the issues that we're seeing, obviously, the travel ban, you know it exists, it's out there, you're all familiar with it. It's still in full force and effect. It still prohibits my family members and yours from entering this country. In fact, if anything, it's probably in some ways expanding. There was just news reports recently that Iranian American students who are supposed to be not even subject to the ban are actually being barred from coming here as well. And so it's very much alive, and as long as it remains alive, the only avenue beyond the ban are these things called waivers, which are exceptions to the ban, which are provided for within the ban, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but they are exceedingly hard to get, and I'm using that as a rosy-colored picture. So we obviously have the ban. That's a major issue. We have several other issues that we're seeing nationally with respect to Iranian Americans. We're seeing issues of hate crimes, and we're seeing actually a fair amount of it. There's been a massive spike, obviously for all minorities in this country, but including for Iranian Americans in particular. The most, I think, famous or infamous case of hate crimes was Shayan Masri in Orange County, a 22-year-old student that was stabbed to death by an admitted white supremacist after he shouted words at him like Arab terrorist and, excuse my language, fucking Iranian. And so that's probably, you know, the most egregious of the circumstances. Incidentally, neither of them have been charged with hate crimes in Orange County. The gentleman, the guy who stabbed him, and his girlfriend. But that's not the only case. You know, just recently this year, there were instances a guy shooting 3, of all people, individuals of Indian descent, Indian Americans, and with the misbelief that they were actually Iranians, killing one, injuring 2 others, and even in the city. The liberal bastion of San Francisco, an Iranian American woman called the police after people had spray painted a swastika on her apartment. So, you know, none of us are really immune. Issues of police brutality, we historically think of those as issues affecting the African American community. Not so. There's been a massive spike with Middle Easterners and Muslims in general. Iranians are certainly not immune to that. The most egregious case there was a case of Bijan Faisal in the Northeast in Virginia, where he was shot 9 times by U.S. Park Police after they were pulling him over. Took them 2 years in a lawsuit just to get the names of the 2 police officers that shot him, just to get their names released to the public. Police brutality is a major issue, and then of course the domestic impact of sanctions. I'm going to leave aside for a moment the humanitarian impact of sanctions inside of Iran, but the domestic impact of it, people don't realize this. Employment and, say, educational job offers and educational offers of admission have been withdrawn, often after people have sold their lives and moved to the United States, usually under the misperceived assumption that the employment offer or the admission to school has somehow violated sanctions laws, and we're seeing bank accounts frozen, usually when they quote-unquote suspicious activity taking place with Iranian Americans, which often leads to disastrous results such as missing mortgages, payments for school, which then of course gets you kicked out of school. If you're here on a visa, that gets you kicked out of the country. So I would say that we have a fair amount facing the community, and now let's be honest, all minority communities in Trump's America are under attack to one extent or another. I think Iranian Americans tend to be in a particularly unique crucible here because you know, you add everything that I just said on top of the withdrawal from the JCPOA, the ratcheting up of political talks, the possible barreling towards war, Iran showing up in the news every day, and it really, once you add the immigration and the civil rights and the discrimination, it really does put Iranians in a unique crossroads that I think we haven't seen probably since, you know, at least if ever, at least the revolution or the hostage-taking situation in the 1980s. So that's where we are in terms of what we're trying to do with coalition partners. I mean, there's a lot, right? And by the way, a lot of this, I think, is a great summary, I believe, in the program, right? So please take a look. And it's hard to describe all of it, but obviously we've engaged in lawsuits. We filed 3 lawsuits against a travel ban. We currently have a lawsuit in the Northern District of California challenging the waiver provisions of the travel ban. Incredible amounts of coalition building with partners within and without the Iranian American community to educate, to spread the word, to engage in advocacy, meeting with local, state, and federal elected officials in an effort to get aid on individual cases of the travel ban, all the way down to legal issues and other coalition partners helping with legislation such as the No Ban Act and other steps. So there's a lot to talk about. I'll cover a little bit more of it a little bit later today, tonight, but I think I'll stop for purposes of time.
We've gone through the historical piece